Hi, folks. In this video, we're going to go over an introduction to research. And we're going to go over the introduction to research article that is in week 2 of Cougar View. It is written by Saeed Kubir. And I'm not going to go through it word for word, but we're just going to go over some key points and defining research and the process of it. So, the basic research question. Uh, Basically, research is just asking questions and seeing if you're right through a process that you or your professor, um, formulate beforehand, and then asking new questions about it. And research is very cyclical. Um, and so let's just go over some key points. So, asking questions, then identifying the important factors. Because let's use the example of studying disinformation. You're going to want to identify the important factors. You know, Studying disinformation is a huge topic. So, what part of studying um, are you going to research about disinformation? And then formulating a thesis or hypothesis. Um, Going back to the types of research in the week 1 module, different types of research will determine if you're going to have more of a scientific method of and formulate a hypothesis or a thesis with more descriptive, historical, descriptive research. And then collecting relevant information. Um, what types of information are you even going to need? And then seeing if this information is leading you to be able to say that your thesis hypothesis is right or wrong. Sometimes you're going to have to work with your hypothesis because you gave it was a little too vague, and you have to tweak it a little bit. Um, and then reconsidering the theory, sometimes halfway through your research, you realize that you're completely wrong. And that doesn't mean your research is a complete bust and a failure. You can, in your final research paper, you can write that this was my thesis. I thought this, I collected this information, and turns out this is actually the answer. And then you can, it's research often leads to new questions. So let's say that we just discover that Facebook isn't the greatest source of disinformation of all the social media platforms. Well, which one is it? And why is that? And how is it that they spread disinformation? And obviously, you're not going to be able to answer all those questions in one research paper, but each one of those can be its own thesis and hypothesis. So, characteristics of research. So, this is just a simplified way of looking at what makes good research good research. You want to make sure that it originates with a problem, that you're stating why you're doing this and what you intend to prove it. You identify a plan of how you're going to where you're going to find the research. And this isn't necessarily you're going to write this in your paper, but it's always good to have some sort of structured plan. I'm going to look at books. I'm going to look at the Facebook site using our example. I'm going to look at my Facebook feed. I'm going to be able to decide disinformation. Um, Something is disinformation based on these characteristics. If you're doing a much bigger research project on this, you're going to want to divide the problem into different elements. Sometimes your research is going to be a phase 1, phase 2 type thing, especially when it comes to more of the science disciplines. Um, and good research is guided by um, the scientific method or a plan. It has a hypothesis that you are guiding the information that you look at is helping you answer that question. Research can become really overwhelming really quickly, especially if you have a really big project. So, um, really, when your research is guided by the research problem, question, hypothesis, thesis, um, it helps you keep towards that. So you're not looking for irrelevant information or um, unnecessary information that really doesn't help you prove or disprove your research question. And then good research collects and interprets the data, um, where you're attempting to solve the problem. So in our example, we can say that um, Facebook is I Facebook is the greatest source of disinformation. Um, Based on this criteria that I set, or um, it isn't based on the criteria I set. And then it's research is also very cyclical, because are you sure that the way you researched which social media platform is the greatest source of disinformation? Are you sure that's exactly the right way to research something like that? So often you'll have to, especially if this is part of your career, you're gonna look at it in a different way and start the process all over again. Oh, where's my mouse? There we go. Um, these are the objectives, and I'm not going to go over them in depth, but objectives of research is, to when you're looking to answer a problem, you um, are are exploring, you're looking to develop the concepts more clearly, establish what's important, what's not important, define things. Just in our disinformation example, how am I judging what is disinformation in my timeline versus what is actual news? Um, and then based on that, you formulate a hypothesis, and looking through your research, you're able to um, say it is or isn't the biggest source of information. I'm not going to go through all of these so this video isn't very long. Um, but also something to look at is scientific method versus non-scientific method, and why the scientific method is important for not just you to follow, but if you're reading somebody else's research, um, you want to know that they um, didn't just kind of slap something together or looked at things that don't really make sense. You want to know that when you're done reading somebody's research, you want to understand how they came to the conclusion that they did. So if you want to go do your own research on the topic, you can go back and verify some of the stuff. Or so you don't have to redo a whole thing, you can build on their research. Research, what is good research? So, research, quality research is you set a thesis, you set a plan, you outline what it is exactly that you are looking to study, knowing the type of research that you're going to be doing. Is it historical? Is it descriptive? Are you going to do your own quantitative research and create your own experiment? Or are you just going to analyze and do a literature review based and look at what other people have said on a particular topic? Um, and good research looks at your findings and gives reasonable um, explanations and looks at potential flaws. And conclusions are, will make sense in quality research papers. Um, you know, you, if the data says one thing and you say, well, I still think this, then it's not going to really make sense. And that's really not good research if the data says one thing, but you're still concluding another. It has to be logical and make sense. Um, so these are the different types of research. I had a PowerPoint in week one, as I mentioned earlier, so we don't have to necessarily go over that, but you can read how he defines it, and the difference between basic research and applied research. Um, you know, as you get more in depth in different research processes, but we don't really need to know that for this class. We're just doing more basic research. And these are other types of research. Quantitative is when a lot of times when you're doing an experiment to measure something. Quantitative is looking for patterns, reasons. Um, a lot of times this is seen in sociology and psychology. Um, and research is really important. It can be really significant. You can find some really groundbreaking thing. You may not be reinventing the wheel, but a lot of research, journalists do research all the time, and uh, you know, some of the greatest news headlines that of all time came from research that professional journalists did. Um, One thing I wanted to touch on is scope. Um, Good research, when you're doing good research, you understand the scope of your research. So, what is scope? Scope is basically looking at the type of paper that you're going to be writing, the type of research you're doing, and finding sources that answer your research question that are appropriate. So, if we're writing a dissertation, um, encyclopedia entries probably isn't appropriate for high level research like a dissertation for your PhD. Knowing your audience, that PhD is going to be read and you're going to defend it to experts within your university who are very, very high level professionals in that discipline that you have been studying. So you have to write accordingly. Now, if it's just a 2-page research paper for, let's say, this class, obviously you're not going to uh, have, it's not the same audience that you're gonna, so your sources can be a little bit are going to be different, and an encyclopedia entry might be uh completely appropriate for a paper for this type of class. And these are just different qualities of different disciplines of research. So if you're in business or sciences, the humanities, this gives you different criteria um, of what makes research in that particular discipline important, and what makes it a quality um, research. So that's all I really wanted to touch on. You can read the rest of this on your own, and you don't have to read everything word for word, but definitely read this, go over the stuff that we touched on, and if you find, if you're a business student, definitely go over the business research stuff, um, and uh, so that is it for this video. I will see you in the next one, where we're going to talk a little bit about articles and journal articles. Okay, see you in the next one.